For those who spend long periods of time at sea for work, what's the eeriest thing you've ever encountered out on the water? A dead body floating in the water. The crew got it into a stretcher, double-bagged it, kept it in the freezer, and turned it over to the local authorities at the next port visit. I had a role in that. It was in an advanced state of decomposition, but there was enough remaining to get an identification by dental records. Some family got closure. Seeing bioluminescent waves at night that make the water glow like something out of a sci-fi movie, it's both beautiful and unsettling. We responded to a sailboat that was taking on water. It became clear that the sailboat wasn't going to make it. We brought the crew of the sailboat onto our vessel, and then we sort of waited around and watched the sailboat sink. What struck me is how silent it was. No fuss. No drama. It wasn't like a dark and stormy night or anything. It was a picture-perfect day. Glassy ocean with not a cloud in the sky, and it didn't matter. It was the kind of day that most seafarers dream about, and yet these blokes had been in a fight for their lives trying to keep their boat afloat. After it sank, there were a few bubbles, and then that was it. Yeah, I'd have never known there was ever a sailboat there. Just a beautiful day without a trace of struggle. Sailboat? What sailboat? Around here? I didn't see a sailboat. I was on a night dive. It was a dive site I was familiar with, and as is common practice, the captain had fixed a steady strobe light to the anchor line of the boat, so we could find our way back. As I was readying to complete my dive and ascend, I wondered why the strobe was no longer blinking and now just a steady beam. Looking at my compass, I was doubly confused by how I had gotten my navigation so wrong. I felt foolish. Had I been cocky and overexcited because I was comfortable with this site? How could I have miscalculated my direction so? It's a dangerous mistake at any time for a diver, much more so at night. But as I was ascending, the brightness of the light really irked me. Why would the captain change the strobe on us? Was something wrong? Then it hit me. I wasn't swimming toward the boat at all. I was swimming toward the moon. The water was so clear and calm, I had mistaken it for a light. Luckily, I hadn't descended fully and wasn't too far off. I was able to redirect to my original navigation, eventually finding the strobe, the boat, and a renewed respect for the ocean's ability to make you second-guess yourself. I saw something that appeared very serpentine and very huge, undulating in the waves of our wake on a very dark, cloudy night en route from Florida to NYC. It was glowing faintly green just underneath the surface and appeared to be some sort of huge fat snake swimming alongside us with a 1.5-foot diameter body. It was mesmerizing, trying to rationalize what I was looking at. Later, I realized it was just a dolphin playing in our wake, whose undulating body and wake were lit up by bioluminescent plankton. Both main engines stopping. Research vessel in the early 90s, about 200 mi off of S. Carolina. We could hold position within a few dozen meters using a satellite system per date's GPS, so we stayed parked for days at a time. Sargasso seaweed would drift past us on its way to Europe. One time the bridge called out an oil slick that turned out to be a pod of killer whales drifting past, about to pass 12 mile or so off the port side. Before the slick came alongside, 2 whales came over and patrolled stem to stern, maybe 30 ft off of the port rail, while the rest of the pod stayed with their kill. About when the kill was even with us, 2 more whales came and patrolled with the first 2, taking 2 complete laps altogether. Then the first 2 left to rejoin the lunch party while the new squad stayed with us. After a while those 2 left, and we never saw any of them again. At no time did they go to the starboard side, and they never went far beyond the ends of our ship. It was an organized guard patrol, their message was very clear, and no one denied that we had been warned off. We never did figure out what was on the menu, but it was large enough to form a huge oil slick. Another ship that was miles away looked like you could reach out and touch it. It's an optical phenomenon I've seen many times, to varying degrees. School of thousands of hammerhead sharks all swimming in the same direction. Whale swimming along that was half-eaten. Being in storms where seas were tall and thinking back on wooden ships in the past traversing through such storms always weirded me out a bit. Doing an underway replenishment. There was a standing wave about 15-20 feet tall between the ships. Dolphins were jumping out of the top of the wave and flipping and twirling in the air. We were cruising in the Bahamas one night in the Devil's Triangle. All of a sudden we hear this chain dragging down the hull for like a minute. Just scraping. It was unnerving. And it was in Exuma Sound, which is like thousands of feet deep, which means it would have been floating and hanging off the bottom of something like an old mine drifting for years. We came about to try and find it, but we could never find it again. It just disappeared. Another time we were under the polar ice cap, and the ice sheet moans all the time. Like what you think a mermaid siren would sound like. And sometimes you can hear it through the hull. For about 65 days straight. Non-stop. The North Pole is absolutely the quietest place you can ever be, and in November, it has this fog that's always there. You can't tell how far anything is away. It gets very unnerving after a while. Submariner here. I was a sonar technician and we were out on mission and had the tow to raise out. We were deep and picked up a couple of BOs like shrimp and whales. It was quiet for like 20 mins after we passed them. All of the sudden we hear a screeching noise like metal on metal. We thought we ran into another sub. The whole boat went into battle stations, woke up our SME writers to determine WTF that was. This went on for like 5 minutes just in and out. It sounded like a song when you started to replay it. The whole thing was recorded. The acting couldn't determine what was, nor did the sonar chief. A message was sent out when we went to PD and the recording was sent to our squadron and ONI once we pulled in. Do not know what happened afterwards, but apparently the Navy collects these types of recording regularly. From what we can tell, it was close and almost as big as the boat. Couldn't tell if it was BO or another boat. No screw noises or ingestion of water, and no, we didn't hit anything. Weirdest thing I've seen by far is coming out of a fog bank and seeing thousands of giant red Humboldt squid with their tentacles waving in the air. It was surreal and something I will never forget, like a bunch of little aliens. I once took a long passage on a merchant ship. Watching a corridor below decks twist and bend as the ship that looks so solid in port is tossed by waves is definitely up there. Like this. HTTPS. But only had a film still camera then, so no way to show it. Neither terribly eerie nor technically at sea. But I was involved as cruise sailing from Chicago to Mackinac Island on Lake Michigan. This is big enough that you can't see land if you're in the middle. It's a freshwater sea in some sense. The boat was, shall we say, not well maintained, so our lights were out and the GPS had packed it in, though there was a handheld if we needed it. The compass was also way off, so I had the guy with the GPS read our track off until I was set for where we needed to be. Looked up and spotted the North Star Polaris at a point in the rigging and just kept it there all night. I told the next watch to just sleep in since I was in the groove, and it was magic. We sailed a perfect course until dawn. TLDR, sailed a good course by the stars all night, a magical experience. Running dark on a ship in the middle of the ocean. You could look any direction, besides down, and see stars. Couldn't see my hand an inch from my face, but could see stars that looked to be just above the water on the horizon. It was like a dome of stars. It made me feel very small and insignificant. We were around some islands in the South Pacific. Saw a guy, one lone dude, floating in the middle of the water, on some kind of inner tube life ring. He hailed us and asked us to stop and bring him aboard because had been shipwrecked. Our captain, having not been born yesterday, offered to throw him a rope instead. We will happily tow you over to the open water and then welcome you aboard. The guy scowled and just said never mind then. Don't stop around islands in pirated waters, folks. My dad's story. He was an engineer on merchant ships. This happened one night during the 1960s. He was sailing with a Chinese crew. They liked to put the ship's arc lights on and go night fishing. One night he heard them making a commotion on deck and went to look. Just at the edge of the light was a long rippling thing, about 50 long. It moved for several minutes then just disappeared. The crew were very excited by it. I now suspect it was an oarfish, but we will never know for certain. The eeriest thing I encountered at sea was an unexplained, persistent, eerie light that followed our ship for hours without ever being visible on radar. Lightning strike at night was blind for 15 seconds, as everything turned pink until everything was black again. June 25, sailing the North Atlantic from England to New York City. The sea was flat and smooth as glass. Fog, so thick I couldn't see the sun or 30 meters, but with a wind from astern equal to our knots. There was no sound or sense of movement. Even the foghorn every 2 minutes was suppressed. Lasted for 2 or 3 days, I can't remember how long anymore. Extremely unsettling.